Welcome to today's video. We're going to be taking a pretty deep dive on the Mark V Supra rotary. Johan has been an absolute wizard in making some really cool for this car. This is a lot of stuff that we wanted to do initially in the project, but due to time circumstances, we didn't get a chance. So while the car was torn down in preparation for Grid Life Lime Rock, we were able to paint the interior, and Johan was able to do a lot of fit and finish things that he wished that he could have done earlier. In addition to that, we're playing around with intake length, intake diameter. Intake now has a drive-by-wire motor, and we're going to walk you through the process of converting to that and hopefully get it on the dyno and see what kind of difference it makes.
This guy's at it again.
No, chill. Adam is at it again. Here's James Dean's car, and now he's trying to reinvent the wheel. So here we are, reinventing the wheel, or maybe the Doritos.
Thanks, James Dean.
Yeah, thanks. Well, appreciate it. Nah, we'll see. Drive-by-wire. It kind of works out because the drive-by-wire motor sits so far down that this is where this part of the flange used to sit at on these brackets. It's got to come up that far up for it to clear the drive-by-wire motor on the plate. First time we did this, we just went with the flow and see what statically looked better. Now it's more of sound and what we could gain out of performance. Again, we're not looking for statically to look good, but it will look weird and it won't flow that good either. Just finding a spot where it clears that, but it also allows for a nice symmetrical look and flow of the air. We got enough pipes to do literally 2 intake manifolds, play with different length. Right now, roughly what I have is this one. It is 13 inches long, 13 and a half inches long to be exact. So it's drastically longer than this one. Get the center line, it's 9 inches, so 9 inches. So I want to do is, because we only have so much room to play with based on the angle that we put this flange on the motor, and then the throttle body sitting on there. We don't want the throttle body to hit the plate in the engine, so we have to play with the pitch of the rotors or the flange. But we only have so much pitch to do, where if you do it like this, then you have to play with this cut to get you a nice flowing radius. That doesn't look good, and it doesn't flow well either. I'm gonna cut another one at a shorter length, which is 10 inches, this length here, and see both setups, how they work. Talk with Mike Vargas, talk with Jamie, and talk with Adam, and see what the direction that we would like to hit.
In addition to all the other changes we're doing on the build, one thing I'm very excited about is we were able to get our hands on one of Optima's Quad 30 lithium batteries. We actually did some testing on these in the RTR race cars, and I've been begging to get one of these. They're finally released, and it is a beautiful battery. Look at this thing, super light, the same quality we've come to know and love from Optima, vibration resistant. And check this out, it has Optima PowerLink, which is a convenient way to control your battery from in the car. We could turn it on and off, and it has a processor inside, which if the battery gets kind of low, it just says, hey, I'm gonna shut the battery off. That way this guy still has enough power to turn on his car. So I'm not saying that this would be a solution if you had a battery drain, but if you do have a battery drain, it will protect you from having your car die. Some of us leave our lights on, do something stupid. Another cool feature of the battery is it actually has quad terminals, which makes it a little easier depending on how you're installing, so you've got options to work with. And believe it or not, we've already made a little base plate. Owen put this together. The way we're gonna mount it in the rear of the Supra, it will be able to sit in here. And because the battery sits so high in the car, it's actually a great deal of weight savings versus it sitting low. Because it's up high, going over to this is a difference that we're gonna feel. So I'm stoked to get this bad boy mounted up. I've been waiting to get my hands on one of these for a while. They're available now, and I wanna give a thank you to Optima. They've been a partner of mine for a while now, and I'm thankful to have them in pretty much all my builds. Make sure I've always got reliable power when I need it.
Now we got 2 different lengths, 2 different pitches. We have one that we prefer. It's as simple as overlaying the pipes to each other and marking it and cutting all of them, and they'll be symmetrical. 13 inch, we'll put this throttle body assembly, I think, a little bit too high. We do have a lot of clearance on the under the hood. That's why I want to talk with Jamie and Adam to see what they think of it. But mark from that mark to this here is exactly 10 inches,
Okay.
which is about an inch longer than our current setup, which I just remeasure, and it is exactly 9 inches long. You always want to measure the center of the line to get the accurate reading. We have our mark here. I'll bring it up with Adam and Jamie and see what they think, and then we'll make a choice from there. I do want to kind of do the same thing I did originally with the other setup,
Yeah.
and make some sort of brackets that hold the flange to the plates, so that, you know, the intake is just not flapping around, especially now with the heavy drive-by-wire setup. So I'll still do something similar to that for the new setup. It makes things a lot easier to work with too. So this is not the right tool for this, but it actually works pretty well. I could match all the well cuts, because today my eyes are not doing all that great. I already f***ed up once. We do have a lot of pipe, but better make the cuts. Yeah. Number 2 down, 2 more to go, and brackets. Looks pretty even to me.
Nice. Two down.
2 down, 20 more to go. Alright, so we never get to pretty much point out these HD clamp installs units. So we use this, these are from Byron. You are utilizing the HD clamps for mock-up and welding. These have these grooves in them that holds the flanges perfectly square, so that when you're fabricating and welding, when you're done and you go to clamp everything on, I'll just fabricate the whole piece, like the cold side, I'll fabricate the whole thing, tack it as well as much as I can, and once you burn it up and you put it back in place, it lands
Exactly.
exactly where this held it. So John, with the assistance of Link, got the pedal to actually calibrate on the ECU. I'll give you a quick demonstration. When this thing loads up, ignition. You're gonna hear it, you're not gonna see unless Mike gets the gas camera to zoom in.
Look at that.
We have an OEM pedal. Working with the EFI hardware throttle body, it's gonna be nice. No more down throttle cable
Yeah.
poking out like the San Luis arc. So I don't have 2 more of those clamps, surprisingly. I'm gonna use the actual clamps itself to hold it to the other ones, but because I feel pretty comfortable with the fitment to the actual flange here, they all fit pretty much identical. I know that if it's meeting on the top, that when I put this down here and I get it in place and kind of pry it up against the flange and I tack weld it, that it will be pretty square. But I feel comfortable enough to do it this way. And we are going to add a tube, a balance tube on the runners. So that will be the part where I use our spare flange to square the bottom and hold things tight to then weld in the balance tube. And then once the balance tube is welded to each runner, it's gonna link all the runners together. So there's no way to do that.
Yeah. When the cardboard comes out, you know, good things are about to happen.
We're about to get real cool in here. Trying to fit the cool suit box, trying to line it up. This is our battery mount before.
Mhm.
We're trying to use the nut search from the battery mount so we don't have to drill more holes in it.
Oh, that's high. It's a little bit concerningly too high. I don't know if we have that much clearance.
Hood clearance.
It's possible. So I already took an ear off the motor. So
Yeah.
there's a gear mount, not a gear, a tab off the motor.
Yeah.
There's one down there that's not there no longer, so that way I could get these as far as down as possible.
So you're already maxed out for motor height.
Yeah, for the drive-by motor. I think this next step is just to get the hood on there, see how much clearance I have on this in here. If not, then screw it. We just drill a hole on the hood. They wanted to put a hole in the hood anyways, right?
Barely touching, like not even.
I highly doubt there's going to be any way I could show this. It's not touching. It's like barely on there. It's wild.
Alright, so while we wait on stuff for the intake to get finalized and welded, I decided to jump into the clutch pedal assembly. It's pretty common with the BMWs to have a plastic clutch pedal. Although this one hasn't failed, it's prone to happen. We are using a F30 BMW clutch pedal set, so it keeps it OEM. The pedal placement is not the same. The OEM pedal would sit here, and then the brake pedal would sit here. So what I did was, I took measurements from the Supra, that's the OEM Supra, and pretty much cut and welded the OEM F30 pedal assembly to match the angle and the height from the OEM Supra, and then plated it. So that was a simple cut and angle, but the clutch pedal, we can't do that because it's plastic, and I don't trust panel bond for this stuff. What I did was I used tape, and I laid tape all over the pedal, and I overlaid it a few layers of it so it's pliable and I could mess with it. I had to go down an inch to meet the same height as the brake pedal. So now the height is the same as this one. So I traced it and cut it out roughly the way I wanted it, lay it on top of a big sheet of steel, trace it out and cut it, and this is what we have. One of the things that I want to make sure that I did was keeping the same pedal engagement or ratio. The ratio is, this is where it pivots, and this is where your rod for the clutch master goes to. Center punch that, drill the holes. Owen made me a bushing this sleeve here, so we could retain the factory, retain these past factory pieces. So everything will be pretty much plug and play. Now we have this thing lines up in the same height as that. This is one of the first bends that I have to give it to pitch it to the right side. Yeah, that's it. Now everything will be more natural in the car, and it will feel like a manual Supra, like TJ Hunt's car, but this one's better. Not bad.
That's some crazy fab right there.
I'm picky with my welds, aluminum welds. I don't put enough time practicing, but we'll see. Now we have the tubes to equalize the intake.
Yeah.
We got some here for the pressure sensor, the drive-by-wire setup.
This is sick.
Yeah,
And you
so
just
now-
poured it all on.
Yeah, now I'm gonna pour these, right? Because these are like almost the sets. The inside diameter is almost the same, so it'll be better than the old setup.
Yeah.
And it'll be all nice and port match. This size, the flanges are still 2-inch ID, but the tube is 2 1/4. So that's why I was porting that so that it has a nice transition
Yeah.
into the actual port of the engine. Seems like this thing held pretty well. So
That's sick.
yeah, so now we can use this for future things too. So
O-Dog Fab.
yep,
That face.
I'm gonna clean this up really good so I can see if there's any more porting I need to do. Then do this side, and then we'll be set. Set up the drive-by-wire linkage and all that, and then we'll be pretty set on that.
I realize I've never disclosed what oil we run in the 4-rotor, and I've actually been seeing some comments asking. This is Pennzoil Platinum Racing 1060. It's actually the same oil that we run in the RTR race cars. This stuff is gnarly. It holds up to heat like no other, and I have full confidence with the oil temps this thing sees that my motor is going to be okay. So yeah, only the best stuff for this. What you probably want to see is the final setup of the ITBs. I think it came up beautifully. We've got the balance tubes in there now too, so that should help kind of equalize things. Maybe if there's a vacuum restriction, it would pull through that. I'm not an ITB wizard, but what I am excited about is we have a map sensor off the back, or I should say a vacuum line, that goes straight to the ECU. And the theory is if there was some sort of intake restriction, we could see that in the onboard map sensor because it would be starting to pull vacuum because it wants more air, and then we would know if we needed to change intake design at all. So kind of doing the final buttoning things up, about to fire this thing up. Oh, one other thing. Apart from like how unbelievably gangster the inside of the car looks, I still can't get over how good the floor plates came out. We decided to re-clear the trans tunnel cover. It had just gotten kind of scratched up while we were building the car, and the clear combined with everything else and Johan's beautiful pedal that I'm so stoked we were able to document, because otherwise you just look at it and be like, oh, that's just a stock pedal. But it's literally art, and the car feels so much better now. Before the pedals were kind of wonky. I got my drive-by-wire pedal now all configured, so I'll be able to do fun stuff with sequential. And like I said before, we'll be able to control it and let it open and close at different rates depending on how and where the power is. I'm really excited to get this thing in the dyno. I'm hoping that it was a pretty big intake restriction. We pick up a little bit of power, but more than anything, I'm excited for the control that we'll have with the drive-by-wire, and maybe we can pick up some torque too. We're not gonna be experimenting with nitrous today, and I feel like I alluded this to in an older video, but I don't know if I showed this. Another cool Johan creation is my rotary-inspired nitrous holder. So the idea was to keep the nitrous bottle in a convenient location because we'll be running the big boy bottles in this thing. So there is kind of an easy place to put in and out. We were thinking about putting it a little bit farther up, but it would be annoying and kind of hard on your back. And of course, it looks gangster like that. So the bottle will kind of rest in there. At some point down the road, I want to experiment with different fuels in this car. Maybe try it with a mixture of methanol and nitromethane, or potentially run the same fuel and run like 100 shot of nitrous. It's really, really good as a fun seat time car, but I'm planning to bring it to LZ World Tour Canada, and I know a lot of those Canadians, they got maple syrup money and they got some big baller cars up there, so I'm gonna need to make a little extra power even if we're on street tire to keep up with those things. So extra 100 horsepower I think will be all right, but in its current form at E-Town, I had to work to keep up with some of those cars.